Nevada's Las Vegas. It's the brightest city in the world, visible even from space. But there's much more to this ancient desert land than its familiar neon glow. It's here in Nevada where one of the greatest booms and busts in American history is still etched in the land. Where legends of the old Pony Express still travel dusty trails. And where wild Mustangs still run free. Here, thousands of men tamed America's wildest river with the eighth wonder of the modern world. Towers of steam hint at powerful volcanic forces that simmer below. And futuristic technology shines with the promise of a brighter tomorrow. From the twisting spine of its sand mountain to a once dying lake that now teems with life, to its Valley of Fire. Only the Silver State could turn an ancient desert into such a dazzling adventure. Only Nevada. In 1852, two brothers, Ethan and Hosea Grosh, arrived in these barren hills in western Nevada. At the time, this was pretty much the middle of nowhere. Dreaming of gold, they pulled out their pickaxes and started digging. 5 years later, they made an earth-shattering discovery: a motherlode of silver ore, and under that, huge deposits of gold. But before the brothers could register their claim, one died from a wound from his pickaxe, and the other left for California. That's when another prospector named Henry Comstock muscled in on the find, claiming it as his own. Soon these hills were known far and wide as the Comstock Lode. News of the lode quickly spread across the nation, and thousands of would-be millionaires flooded into this dusty corner of Nevada. Little did most of them know, they would soon be risking their lives and slaving away for others deep under the Nevada desert. Unlike California's gold that could be picked out of streams, here, the veins of silver and gold were buried far underground, which meant that men had to dig mines that were deeper and more dangerous than any before, like this one that reached down 3,250 feet. As miners descended, boiling spring water caused the temperature in the tunnels to rise higher and higher, the deeper they went. Tools got so hot, they could scorch skin. At the bottom, clouds of steam filled the tunnels, and underground floods threatened to boil the miners alive. Men who had come to Nevada in search of easy money ended up sweating their lives away in the depths of other men's mines. By the early 1860s, the prospectors' primitive campsite, known as Virginia Town, was being transformed into Virginia City. Today, it's one of the best preserved old mining towns in America. Back then, it was one of the finest cities between Denver and San Francisco. Some merchants made fortunes feeding, housing, and entertaining the miners. Opera houses, saloons, opium dens, and brothels once lined its streets and helped empty miners' pockets. The little they had left often went to renting a room at one of the local hotels. One of the first built, around 1860, was the Gold Hill. It's now the oldest operating hotel in Nevada. But back then, Many of the miners who checked in at the Gold Hill dreaming of riches often checked out broke and broken by their time in the Comstock mines. One miner avoided that fate by turning his time in Virginia City into another kind of fame and fortune. After just a few months here, Samuel Clemens figured out that prospecting wasn't his thing. So he started working for a newspaper called the Territorial Enterprise in a brick building downtown. Twain later described what it was like to live in Nevada's first boomtown. The flush times were in magnificent flower. The city of Virginia claimed a population of 15 to 18,000, and all day long, half of this little army swarmed the streets like bees, and the other half swarmed among the drifts and tunnels of the Comstock, hundreds of feet down in the earth directly under those same streets. Often we felt our chairs jar and heard the faint boom of a blast down in the bowels of the earth under the office. Some men in Virginia City were getting fabulously rich. One of them was George Hearst. Hearst built this house in Virginia City while earning the first few $1 million of a fortune that would allow his son to build California's famed Hearst Castle. Later, industrialist John Mackey lived here and earned millions more. He and the Comstock's other newly minted tycoons became known as the Silver Kings. As more and more precious ore arrived on the surface, the Silver Kings needed a cheap and fast way to get it out of town. In 1868, a banker named William Sharon built a railroad to do that job. Called the Virginia and Truckee Railroad, it still carries passengers today. Sharon's trains brought raw ore from the mines down to the smelters that purified it into silver and gold, chugging back up again with the lumber and other supplies that kept Virginia City booming, and ferrying passengers to and from the transcontinental rail lines in Reno. But for the Silver Kings, the V&T's most important destination was a little town just 15 miles to the southwest. In 1863, Congress had picked tiny Carson City as the site of a new U.S. mint designed to stamp the gold and silver flooding out of the Comstock into coins. In 1866, this elegant building rose in what was then the middle of the Nevada wilderness. The first coins finally came off its presses in 1870. That same year, construction began on Nevada's first State House. The next year, the legislature met here for the first time, gathering under this painted silver dome to govern the thriving Silver State. At the time, Carson City was also home to a bustling Chinese community. In the 1880s, roughly 10% of the city's residents were Chinese, many of them drawn here by jobs on the railroad. But by then, the boom times that had brought them here were already turning to bust. The ore in the Comstock lode was running out. Henry Comstock's time had run out too. The claims that he had sold for a reputed $12,000 had been resold for millions. It's believed that Comstock, penniless, put a revolver to his head and pulled the trigger. During the busiest days of the Comstock lode, one miner had died, on average, every week in his hunt for silver and gold. Now, as the ore petered out, the survivors began to leave. The population of Virginia City's Story County dropped from nearly 20,000 in 1875 to less than 4,000 by the turn of the century. Blocks of its historic buildings lay abandoned for decades, only to be revived in the middle of the 20th century by a new boom in tourism. These days, the theme park atmosphere here can make the tough times of Virginia City's past seem like ancient history. But this hasn't been the last dusty corner of Nevada to be transformed by a boom of epic proportions, or to be hit by the hard times that follow. These are the twisting dunes of Nevada's Sand Mountain. They look like the spine of an ancient ocean creature, beached on this desert land. From above, they appear as waves on a sea. But for miles around Sand Mountain, there's no water to be seen. Nevada's parched landscape appears to stretch on for eternity. Today, this is America's driest state, with an average rainfall of just 7 inches per year. It's easy to imagine that this land has always looked this way, even in its prehistoric past. Back during the last ice age, much of western Nevada was actually covered by a body of water that scientists call Lake Lahontan. Then, with the end of the last glacial age, as temperatures in Nevada started to rise, Lake Lahontan began to evaporate. Most of the lake disappeared. But luckily, part of it has survived and is now a stunning desert oasis. Nearly 10,000 years ago, Native Americans from the Paiute tribe arrived in this unforgiving desert. For generations, they drank the lake's water, ate its fish, and shared its bounty with flocks of white pelicans. Every year, these beautiful birds return from Southern California and Baja, Mexico, to summer and nest on Anaho Island in the center of the lake. They're still coming back today, but their refuge was almost destroyed in the early part of the 20th century. It was only saved thanks to a hard-fought legal battle waged by their Paiute neighbors. A battle with roots that go back even farther, to 1844, when famed explorer John Fremont and scout Kit Carson arrived here on their way to the west. Fremont mapped the shoreline and named these waters Pyramid Lake, after a rock formation just offshore. Soon, settlers were following his trail. With their arrival, life on the lake's ancient shores began to change. In 1905, the flow from the Truckee River, the lake's only source, mysteriously began to slow. As the shoreline steadily receded, Pyramid Lake seemed doomed to become yet another dry Nevada lakebed. But then, the Paiute discovered the cause of the lake's decline. A U.S. Bureau of Reclamation project called the Derby Diversion Dam. It blocked the Truckee and funneled much of its water away from the ancient stream bed into a new canal. From there, it flowed to farms and ranches, which was a good thing for crops and livestock, but hard on the Paiute and the pelicans, who depended on the river's water. Starting in the 1960s, the Paiute fought back, demanding that the Truckee's water be re-diverted to their dying lake. The battle over the lake continued for decades, until in the 1980s, the Paiute finally won. Farmers were forced to share the water with the Paiute, who can once again rely on its bounty. And Anaho Island is again home to one of the largest nesting colonies of pelicans in the U.S. But Nevada's desperate need for water continues, as do efforts to engineer a solution. To the south of Pyramid Lake, this surprisingly lush landscape has been coaxed from the desert with water from the Carson River. A series of reservoirs captures the water. A wide-ranging irrigation system delivers it to farms and homes. It's part of a statewide network designed to help nearly bone-dry Nevada make the most out of every drop of water it gets. And nothing else in that network, or just about anywhere else, does that job in a bigger way than this icon of American ingenuity, the Hoover Dam. The dam was constructed on the Colorado River, which flows from Colorado through Utah and then along Nevada's border with Arizona, before continuing down California to Mexico. All too often, this powerful river was overflowing its banks, flooding fields and causing millions of dollars in crop damage, while other farmers weren't getting the water they needed. So, in 1929, the U.S. government announced that it would try to tame this wild river by constructing what was then the world's largest dam. After scouting for a place to build it, surveyors settled on a narrow stretch of canyon right here on the Nevada-Arizona border. Launched in the midst of the Great Depression, word of the Hoover Dam project triggered a flood of hungry workers from across the country into Nevada. Once again, a dusty corner of this state was beckoning opportunity seekers. But this time, they were just seeking jobs, not fortunes of silver and gold. And 21,000 men were lucky enough to get them. And a place to live, too, in a new government-built town called Boulder City. Every day, workers crowded into two-story buses and traveled down a brand new highway, 7 miles to the dam site. For the next 5 years, they labored here in up to 100-degree conditions. It wasn't just grueling, it was also extremely dangerous. Men known as high scalers clambered along the cliffs at the river's edge and then dangled down hundreds of feet on ropes to drill holes for dynamite that blasted away the canyon walls. Then, the lowest paid workers, called muckers, used shovels to scoop up the dynamited rock for removal. Dozens of others labored deep underground, drilling out 4 3/4-mile tunnels that would temporarily divert the raging Colorado River around the site. Falling rocks, carbon monoxide, tough bosses, and long hours created dangerous conditions. At least 96 workers were killed on the job. Even some engineers had believed that the dam could never be built. But as the months wore on, the Hoover Dam's signature curved wall of reinforced concrete steadily began to rise. If it had been built in a single continuous pour, the concrete would have taken more than a century to cool. So workers had to build the 726-foot-high dam 5 feet at a time, using individual buckets of concrete that sped down to them on cables every 78 seconds. It's still possible to see these individual pores etched in the face of the curve. When they were finally finished on March 1st, 1936, 2 years ahead of schedule, their handiwork was hailed as an engineering marvel, the 8th wonder of the modern world. It was also an aesthetic triumph, thanks to its elegant proportions, futuristic design, and Art Deco details. It's visually stunning from the air, but that makes it easy to forget just how critical the engineering of the Hoover Dam remains today. If it ever gave way, it could unleash a wall of water so high it could flood an area the size of Connecticut 10 feet deep, destroy vital irrigation systems across the American Southwest, and leave millions without drinking water. After September 11, 2001, officials decided that U.S. Highway 93, which crossed the dam, posed too great a risk. To help keep this vital part of America's infrastructure safe, the U.S. government commissioned another engineering marvel, the longest concrete arch bridge in the Western Hemisphere. The Michael Callahan Pat Tillman Memorial Bridge, named after a politician and a war hero, soars 890 feet above the Colorado River. It took nearly 10 years and $240 million to build. But when it opened in October 2010, truck traffic was finally diverted safely away from the Hoover Dam, helping ensure that this national treasure remains secure. But while the dam may be here for generations to come, the lake that it created and the communities its water sustains have a far less certain future. Lake Mead fills valleys as far away as 110 miles upstream from the dam. In places, it reaches 8 miles wide. Today, many take the presence of this rich desert resource for granted. 8 to 10 million of them boat, ski, and relax here every year. But some scientists say that they had better enjoy it while they can. Nevada has been experiencing years of drought. A bathtub ring on this narrow stretch of the lake reveals just how far Lake Mead has dropped. As it falls, new reefs and islands appear. And that's not all. In 2002, a series of mysterious outlines in the earth emerged from the receding lake. From the air, they look like the remains of ancient ruins or remnants of a Wild West fort. But old-timers here know the truth. These are the crumbling foundations of a former town called St. Thomas. More than 70 years ago, it was evacuated when Lake Mead was created. Legend has it that the town's last resident rowed away from his front porch in a boat just before his house was submerged. Today, he'd be able to walk back home. Scientists doubt that St. Thomas will ever be underwater again. But it might not be the last place around here to be abandoned. If Lake Mead continues to disappear, so too could this nearby metropolis, Las Vegas. The promise of water from Lake Mead helped spur the rapid development of this desert valley. It was once the fastest growing city in America. Vast subdivisions spread out in every direction and offer residents the perfect mirage that life in Vegas isn't really life in the desert at all. But homeowners here aren't just living on artificial lakes. They may also be living on borrowed time. As Lake Mead shrinks, so do the chances that Las Vegas, as most know it today, will survive. Experts predict that the lake could be dry altogether by 2021, unless water use is curtailed. And in a desert city where the flamboyant display of water helps drive the economy, figuring out where to cut back isn't so easy. And is forcing Las Vegas to come up with some innovative solutions, including paying homeowners to replace their lawns with gravel, asking golf courses to dig up their turf, and recycling almost every drop of wastewater the city produces. So far, water use here has dropped by nearly 20% in the 7 years ending in 2008, even as the metropolitan area added almost 500,000 people, making Las Vegas a desert survival success story, at least for now. A desolate road winds across Nevada's northern desert. This is U.S. Route 50, also known as the loneliest road in America. It crosses the continent from Sacramento, California to Ocean City, Maryland. It's been said that anyone who travels the Nevada leg of this highway should make sure they have desert survival skills first. But if crossing Nevada's desert by car is tough enough, just imagine doing it alone on horseback in the 19th century. That's what riders of the famed Pony Express did. Long before today's overnight couriers existed, urgent messages were carried across the United States in saddlebags. From St. Joseph, Missouri, Pony Express riders headed west at breakneck speed. Changing horses along the way, they could make the 1,800-mile journey to Sacramento, California in just 10 days. That is, as long as they survive this stretch of desert. The only evidence left of this remarkable mail service are the remains of some of the 30 way stations along the Nevada route. Stations like this one at Sand Springs. These outposts kept the riders supplied with food, water, and fresh horses for every leg of the journey. Now, they're just ruins. New technology brought an end to the Pony Express. The arrival of the telegraph in 1861 put America's first express courier service out of business after just 18 months. Today, new kinds of couriers ply Nevada's desert highways. And they're not here by chance. Many of them are carrying goods to and from one of the largest warehousing and distribution centers in America, in a little Nevada town called Fernley. It's home to Amazon.com's largest facility, which is as big as the decks of 4 aircraft carriers combined. Inside lie 9 miles of conveyor belts that allow pickers and shippers to send out hundreds of thousands of packages a day. One reason Fernley has become a major distribution hub is because it's strategically located off Highway 80, which runs from New Jersey to San Francisco. An added incentive is that Nevada has no corporate income tax. But even though trucks have made express ponies obsolete in Nevada, here in the high desert, herds of wild horses called mustangs run free. To many, this species might seem like another example of Nevada's ancient natural bounty. But these animals aren't actually native to these hills. Conquistadors brought horses here from Europe to help them conquer the West. Now, descendants of those horses run wild in the state. With no natural predators, a herd of mustangs can double in size every 4 years. Studies conducted by the U.S. Bureau of Land Management show that there are thousands more of these animals here than the land can support. Herds of mustangs trample thousands of acres of land a year, which threatens the habitats of a wide range of native species. Unless their numbers are kept in check, officials fear that the state's already fragile landscape could be permanently damaged. A landscape that's been remarkably transformed over hundreds of millions of years. There's no better place in Nevada to witness the beauty of this state's geological past than here, the Valley of Fire. Shifting sand dunes from the age of the dinosaurs have been trapped in time, creating red sandstone formations that rise above the desert floor. Flares from the rising sun earned the Valley of Fire its name and helped draw the attention of Hollywood producers scouting for locations that looked like other planets. Total Recall, Star Trek Generations, and The Transformers are just a few of the films that were shot in these otherworldly canyons. But while the Valley of Fire can seem peaceful, Nevada's geological history has been anything but quiet. At least if you look at it over tens of millions of years. Underneath this desert floor lies a cauldron of volcanic forces that makes Nevada the 3rd most seismically active state in America, after California and Alaska. Bicycling through Red Rock Canyon, where Nevada's wilderness provides an awe-inspiring backdrop, it would be easy to forget that magnitude 7 earthquakes occur here on average every 30 years. And nothing has defined this state's natural and human history more than these seismic events. Evidence of the powerful forces simmering under the Nevada desert can occasionally be spotted on the surface. Steam rises over a geothermal field just miles from Virginia City. The same boiling water that once threatened miners of the Comstock lode is now a new source of energy. This geothermal field alone can generate enough energy to run 45,000 homes. To tap this valuable power source, engineers drill down up to 6,000 feet and then let the rising steam power the generators. Geothermal is helping transform America's energy landscape. But what transformed Nevada from a land of lush forests and lakes to desert took much greater forces and millions of years. It all happened here in the Sierra Nevada, a mountain range that lies on the state's northwest boundary with California. 400 million years ago, the Pacific Ocean still covered this region. But as recently as 5 million years ago, an ancient clashing of tectonic plates parted the waters, pushing upward, and the Sierra Nevada was born. Mount Rose, a former volcano, lies on the Nevada side of the range. Peaks like this one were high enough to stop moist Pacific air on the California side from traveling east. Over the millions of years that followed, Nevada's lakes disappeared. Its forests died. But luckily, the same forces that caused Nevada to become a desert also gave it this shimmering jewel. Nestled in the Sierras and straddling the border of Nevada and California, Lake Tahoe was first filled by melting glaciers and still contains some of the purest water in the world. In some spots, it reaches depths of 1,645 feet, making Lake Tahoe one of America's deepest lakes. At the waterline towers Cave Rock. It's the remnant of an active volcano and is now pierced by 2 highway tunnels. Members of the area's Washoe tribe of Native Americans, whose ancestors have lived on the banks of the lake for thousands of years, call it Dayak Wadapush, or Standing Greystone. To them, it's a sacred site. Their ancient stories tell of small beings called the Mitsumia, or water babies, who dwell in the rock's caves. To keep these powerful spirits at peace, the Washoe have always kept a respectful distance when passing the rock, which made the drilling of its road tunnels hard for them to take. The depth of Lake Tahoe means that its water is exceptionally cold, and many say that water babies aren't the only spirits who dwell here. In one of the last scenes of Francis Ford Coppola's film Godfather 2, the character Fredo Corleone is shot in the head on a rowboat on the lake, and his body dumped overboard. At the time, there were popular rumors that the depths of Lake Tahoe hold hundreds of murder victims, perfectly preserved by the icy cold, still in their suits and ties, dumped here over the decades by the American mafia. Those rumors appeared to be true when a newspaper reported that Jacques Cousteau had journeyed to the bottom of the lake and then said that the world was not yet ready for what he had seen. But Cousteau had never actually been to Lake Tahoe at all. What is true is that the mob often vacationed at Lake Tahoe. Acres of green forests reach right down to the lake, a lush landscape that hints at what much of Nevada might have looked like hundreds of millions of years ago. The fiery forces that turned this state into a desert are also responsible for creating its vast deposits of gold, silver, and other valuable minerals. Minerals that are still being mined today in amazing quantities. Every year, billions of dollars of gold and silver are still scraped out of Nevada soil. Today, Nevada is in the midst of the biggest gold boom in American history. More gold has been extracted here since 1998 than in the California Gold Rush and Comstock Lode combined. These days, giant mining companies control the wealth buried beneath Nevada's hills. The days of lonely prospectors are pretty much gone. But there was a time when unhappy housewives flooded into this state. For years, the nearby city of Reno offered married couples a fast chance to untie the knot. In 1931, lawmakers here made it easier to get a divorce than anywhere else in America, which turned Reno into the country's divorce capital. Grand new hotels were quickly built to house the flood of would-be divorcees. One of the first, and the classiest at the time, was the El Cortez. It's hard to believe now, but it was also the tallest building in Reno when it opened in 1931. Hopeful wives paid a premium rate of $6 a night to recline in its Art Deco splendor as they waited out the 6 weeks residency required for a Reno divorce. Once their wait was over, they headed to the Washoe County Courthouse to get their decree. Nearly 33,000 people got divorced here in the 1930s alone. After Life magazine published a photograph of a young woman kissing one of the courthouse's classical pillars for good luck, a new tradition was born. Marilyn Monroe did the same in the 1960s film, The Misfits. In the film, she also honored another Reno divorcee tradition. She went over to this bridge on the Truckee River and threw her wedding ring over the side. By then, the days of being renovated, code for getting a divorce, were coming to an end, as marriage laws were being eased in every state. And within 2 decades, another Nevada city was overtaking Reno as the capital of sin. A place that would soon experience the thrilling rise and terrifying freefall of Nevada's booms and busts like no other. In 1946, mobster Bugsy Siegel came here to Las Vegas to make his mark by developing a new hotel called the Flamingo on a scrappy stretch of Highway 91 outside of town. Siegel spent $6 million to transform it into a pleasure palace. But by the time it turned a tidy profit, Bugsy was dead. Shot in the head while reading the morning newspaper, some say by his own associates, who thought he was skimming their investment. The Flamingo proved that fortunes could be made in this desert valley. And soon, more mob money flowed in. Casinos rose, and Highway 91 was reborn as the Las Vegas Strip. But it didn't look anything like this. Today's Las Vegas is the product of one of the biggest booms in Nevada history. A boom that kicked off in the 1960s after the Nevada legislature legalized corporate ownership of Sin City's casinos. In 1967, corporate raider Kurt Kerkorian pumped $100 million into the city, buying up the MGM Grand, which he has since rebuilt for more than $1 billion. As more money flowed into Vegas from Wall Street, the mob moved out. In 1989, junk bonds backed the construction of Steve Wynn's $630 million Mirage, the most expensive casino in the world at the time. Wynn then staked his claim to Las Vegas glory with nightly pyrotechnics that still stop tourists in their tracks today. As visitors poured in and gambling money flowed, it seemed like Wynn's stunning showplace could never be topped. Until he topped it himself in 1998 with this outrageous water show that rivaled the Mirage's fire. The Bellagio was more opulent, more expensive, and more impressive than anything the Strip had ever seen. But Wynn wasn't the only one looking for new ways to make his mark on the Strip in the go-go 90s. In 1993, the Luxor had put its own unique stamp on the Las Vegas skyline with this sleek glass pyramid. The light that shoots from its point isn't just the brightest in Las Vegas. At 42.3 billion candle power, it's the strongest beam of light in the world. That same year, at the height of the Las Vegas boom, a small-time casino owner named Bob Stupak conceived of the city's newest icon, the Stratosphere. It's America's tallest freestanding observation tower, topped by carnival rides. But even this was bought out by a Wall Street firm. Thrill seekers scream with joy and terror while being dangled from its top. But that's not all they do. Every few minutes, on busy weekend nights, a tourist steps out onto a ledge high over the strip and prepares to jump from the tower. After paying more than $100, each jumper is strapped to a high-speed descent wire, steps out into the abyss, and then plummets 855 feet. It's not a ride for the faint-hearted, but going into free fall is nothing new in Nevada. Every great economic boom in the state's history has been matched by a bust equal in size. And the latest Las Vegas boom is no exception. The Strip by night is not quite the same as the Strip by day. Signs of economic hard times are everywhere. These are the bones of what was supposed to be Nevada's next big casino, the Echelon. If this $5 billion project remains on hold, it may have to be demolished. The investors in this tower, the $3 billion Fontainebleau Hotel, went belly up before it was completed. But even these projects pale in comparison to this, an 18 million square foot complex of glass towers, shops, hotels, and casinos in the center of the Strip. It's called City Center. In 2005, investors were so convinced that the Las Vegas boom would continue, they committed to a nearly $9 billion deal to build it. City Center was intended to create a newly hip and urban destination on the Strip. Star architects were brought in. Helmut Jahn created these leaning glass towers of condos. Lord Norman Foster designed this oval-shaped tower. And Daniel Libeskind came up with the aluminum-clad retail and entertainment center that holds it all together. But just after City Center was built, the American economy went for a wild ride and took the development's investors along with it. Behind its glamorous facade, apartments remain empty. And the Norman Foster Tower will have to be taken down. Shoddy contracting work has made it unstable. But Las Vegas's latest bust reaches far beyond the Strip. Once, this valley was being developed at a rate of 2 acres an hour. By 2010, 1 out of every 9 homes was threatened by foreclosure. These empty lots may remain unbuilt for a very long time. These days, the booms and busts of the city and its casinos are attractions in themselves. Each one of these works of advertising art is a time capsule from a past Las Vegas where anything seemed possible. Today, they are lovingly preserved in a popular park called the Neon Boneyard. Las Vegas's economic future may be a big question mark in the sky, but that doesn't mean this state's boom times are over. You never know over which dusty hill the next gold rush will happen. Some say it's already happening here. Just outside Boulder City, something shimmers on the horizon. But this isn't a desert mirage. It's a solar plant. It may look like it's been built in the middle of nowhere, but it's more than 700,000 solar panels are perfectly positioned to maximize the sun's rays. It may look like cutting-edge technology from the air, but right next door, they're trying out an even newer way to get energy from the sun. This is Nevada Solar One. Unlike standard solar plants that use panels to capture the sun's energy and convert it directly to electricity, here, 182,000 mirrors, spread over 400 acres, are being used to concentrate the sun's heat and then use it to turn liquid to steam to power electricity-creating generators. Proving that today, energy companies are the prospectors of old, seeking new ways to tap Nevada's natural resources and turn them into silver and gold. Just as people have been doing here ever since the first thirsty settlers discovered this arid land.